Hi geometry students, again, this is Mrs. Donahue. So I hope that your last lesson went okay via video. If it did not, feel free to bring questions on Friday. We will have an A day on Friday. So this is our next lesson, which is applying the tangent ratio. So this might be new to you guys, might not. You might have done a little bit with trigonometry, but we're going to do section 7.5 today as a class here. So one of the things I want you guys to check is check that your calculator is in the correct setting. So let me show you guys on my calculator here quick. So if I look at my calculator, you want your calculator to say DEG. There's other settings, so if I hit this DRG button, you can do radians or gradients. We want it in degrees. So that's what you want, so it should say DEG. Same thing if you're using like a cell phone or something like that. You want to make sure you're in degrees. So the way to check that is if you type in sine, or it looks like sin of 30, it should be 0.5. If I do that in radians, I get a different answer. I don't want that answer. I want it in degrees. So I switch that over. So we want it to be in degree mode. That's important. So just double check that your calculator's in the right settings if you guys have that. So we're going to talk about the tangent ratio just today. There's other ratios, that sine and cosine, sin and cos. Those are other ratios. We're just going to work with the tangent. So that's why it's important we have a calculator for this chapter. So what trigonometry does, it allows us to find missing sides and angles of a right triangle. So find missing sides and angles of right triangles. So we have a right triangle here, and we're saying to find the tangent of A. What they're talking about with the tangent of A, we're gonna use a little acronym that I'll talk to you guys about later. It's called TOA. A is an angle. So A is one of our angles. So here's our angle A. And what the tangent relates is it relates the sides that are listed here. So we know the hypotenuse is this one. Again, if you guys want these notes, I did put them online if you wanted to print them. Otherwise, you're just gonna have to draw these. So you might have to be writing some things down and pausing. But then across from the angle A, we're gonna label this as the opposite side. So this side is across from that angle. So we're gonna call this the opposite side. And then the other side that's not the opposite or the hypotenuse is called the adjacent. Adjacent means next to. So it's basically the side that's next to it, that's not the hypotenuse. So I would suggest labeling these three every single time you get a triangle based off the angle. So A is an angle, and we're labeling everything like that. So opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. So the tangent of the angle, so this is going to be an angle listed there, we're going to talk about a ratio. So it's going to be the opposite side over the adjacent. So opposite over adjacent. This is going to be an important ratio, and eventually you'll memorize it. Right now you won't probably feel comfortable doing that. But we're always talking about the tangent of some angle, and then these are sides. So maybe it's important to write, this is an angle, and these are both sides. Okay. So in this triangle here, it asks us to find the tangent of n, the tangent of L as a fraction and as a decimal rounded to 4 decimal places. So I'm gonna use two different colors. So I'm gonna first focus on the tangent of n. So here's n. And I have to label this triangle based off of n. So 15 is our hypotenuse, because it's the longest side, it's across from the right angle. N is across from this side, which is 9, that's the opposite. And then the other side is called the adjacent, so I'm just going to abbreviate adjacent. So it's the other side there. So the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. So we're gonna write this ratio, opposite over adjacent. So that's gonna be 9 over 12, because that's what this ratio always is. So 9 over 12. But I wanna simplify that. 9 over 12 would be, divide them each by 3. So it'd be 3 over 4. So that would be the tangent of n, would be 3 over 4. Now they also want it as a decimal rounded to 4 decimal places. We won't have to worry about that, because if you divide 3 by 4 in your calculator, hopefully you don't have to do that, but if you do, 3 divided by 4 is 0.75. So the tangent of n is 0.75. So those are our two answers. They're the same value, talking about the tangent of n. But now I'm going to change colors, because now they want the tangent of L. So now I have to change my perspective. So now we're going from this side. So now if I look at this, this is still my hypotenuse, but if you look, this is no longer my adjacent side. This would be my opposite side. And then this is no longer the opposite, this is now the adjacent. So opposite over adjacent. Hypotenuse still, so we're talking about the tangent of L. And again, we go opposite over adjacent. So tangent of L be 12 over 9, because it's opposite over adjacent. So it's just the flipped version of this one. Again, we're going to divide by 3. We get 4 over 3 would be the fraction. And then if I do 4 over 3 in my calculator, I'm going to get 1.3 repeating, and they want 4 decimal places, so I'll just write all 4 there. Obviously keeps repeating. So you'll have to do some of this where they ask you to write it as a fraction and a decimal, so just follow whatever directions they give you for the homework there for that. This next problem, they're asking us to find x. X is right here, but obviously we're not done there. But they give us this angle this time. So rather than talking about like just angle L, they're giving me 10 degrees. So that's the angle we know something about. So I'm gonna label everything based off of 10. So here's my hypotenuse. It's across from my right triangle. I don't know that, nor do they tell me anything about it. The opposite is x. And then my adjacent is 16 from my angle 10. And we always use whatever angle they give us. We don't ever use the 90-degree angle for this. So I'm gonna set this ratio up. So tangent of what angle? Oh, I know angle 10 degrees. So I write tangent of 10 equals, now I'm gonna write it as opposite over adjacent. So remember this, opposite over adjacent. So x on top, and adjacent is 16 on the bottom. Now think about this for a second. How would I go about solving this? In order to get the x alone, I need to get the x all alone, so it's being divided by 16, so instead I'm going to multiply by 16. Those 16s are going to cancel. And what x is going to equal is 16 times the tangent of 10, and I'm going to put that exact thing into my calculator. So tangent of 10 is actually a number. It's not a number you're going to know off the top of your head. You're going to need a calculator for it. So when I type this in, I'm just going to type in exactly what's there. So I'm going to write 16 times, and then tangent is here, tangent of 10. And I can close that parenthesis if I want, I don't need to. So I got 2.8 for my x value. So that's what it just ends up being, is x is 2. It says 4 decimal places, I guess. I don't know, let's do 4. 8212. And so that's my x value based off of just solving this by getting the x alone. And that kind of makes sense, because if this is 16, this is a really small angle, so that should be a really small side. Now some of your calculators, you want to play with them until you get an answer that looks like mine. So if your calculator has you do things a little bit out of order, double check that you know how to enter this. I'm going to pause the video because the video is under 10 minutes. Upload a little bit faster, so I'm going to work on the back side as part 2. So I'm going to stop here for part 1 and then flip to part 2 on the back side.